Tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome to our next issue of Expanding Our Bubbles and our broadcast with Amanda Fleming tonight, our live interview. We are Tiny Nation. I'm Erin Maloney. I'm the founding director of Tiny Nation, and we are bringing you a series of live interviews as we move into our new normal, which is now level 2 as of today. To help support us as parents, as teachers, as educators and kaiako with the transition, with supporting our precious tamariki and making sure that we are good to go when it comes to laying the foundations for what our new normal and our new world looks like post-COVID-19. So tonight I'm really excited to bring Amanda Fleming to you all. Amanda is a personal development coach and facilitator, and she is going to talk to us a little bit about conscious evolution and what that looks like. And there probably couldn't be a more appropriate time. So I'm going to bring Amanda into the screen now. Just bear with me. Kia ora, Amanda.
Kia ora koutou. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolute delight, Erin, as anyone who knows both of us will know. It's a treat for me, so thank you for having me.
Great. Well, for those of you who don't know, Amanda is personal development coach, facilitator extraordinaire. Our personal relationship actually goes way back. Amanda's been a personal mentor of mine for about 12 years now, since we first started doing a bit of work together. Seems like a long time, yet only yesterday.
I know, it does.
And Amanda is here to talk to us all about how to stay motivated and on purpose during these pretty challenging and uncertain times. She's a 2-time author, and we've got a bit of a special surprise for you later on. I'll let her introduce that in a moment. An evolutionary thinker with over 30 years of experience in designing personal development workshops and presentations. She works a lot with teams and with leaders and many of our great businesses around there. And we feel really lucky to have you here tonight. So thanks so much, Amanda.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, we'll just crack straight into it. And I'm going to ask you the question that I ask everyone when they come on to our Expanding the Bubble series. The first question I ask them is to tell us a little bit about their why and how they came to be in the space that they're in. Here at Tiny Nation, we have a really compelling passion and purpose that we combine, and we like to partner with people who are on the same stretch as us, as I know you are. So if you could just take us through a little bit about who you are, what led you to do the work that you're doing, because 30 years ago, no one probably knew what personal development even meant. And you would have been a real visionary in that respect, leading the charge around what we are now calling this conscious evolution and co-creation of a new world. So if you could just share a little bit about your background, that'll pick us up.
Sure. Well, I don't know that personal development wasn't around, but it was certainly something that we sort of did in covert weekends. We weren't looking at personal development in a professional setting. And I think that's what's happened over the last 30 years is personal development has become a professional issue. You know well that one of my mantras is inner first, outer follows. And that idea that first we deal with what's going on the inside in order to influence what's happening in life on the outside instead of the other way around, i.e., you know, when you've got the right house and the right job and the right everything, then you'll feel happy. I think for a lot of us, we're conditioned to think that that's the road to happiness. But of course, if you go down that road and get to the end and go, well, how come I've got all that and I'm not happy? Or I don't feel my life is meaningful and purposeful, then that can be a bit of a blow. So what happened with me, short story is that I grew up in what I call a classically dysfunctional Kiwi household. And we're not talking about anything in the extreme, but I grew up in the 1960s in a little town called Dunedin. And that was a pretty conservative town in those days. And my parents had split up when I was about 3.5. My older brother was about 7 or 6 or 7. And so we were one of those families with the label broken home. And growing up in that environment, you know, divorce was a word people said behind their hand and, you know, pointed and things like that. So it was very different to how much more out of our we've gotten more comfortable with relationships having all kinds of different forms rather than what was the standard practice back in those days. And I did what all kids do. I just grew up with my environment being my environment. That was how it was. And there were a few rocky patches along the way, especially through adolescence. I did not have a very good relationship with myself, which I have come to learn is mission critical in life. So I was a kid with issues, particularly as a teenager. I went to teachers' college. I dropped out. I went to law school. I dropped out. So you're talking to a 2-time university dropout. I know you know that, but your listeners may not. And eventually, I got to the end of my teenage years and I joined the New Zealand Police. So at the ripe old age of 20, I spent most of my 20s as a frontline police officer. And during that time, I got more and more curious about the existential questions, those ones that can wake us up in the middle of the night, like, well, who am I and what am I and where did I come from and where do you go when you die and all of those kinds of things that can keep you awake in the middle of the night. And I was no different in that regard. And I was also in a job, i.e. the police, that I just started noticing perfectly intelligent people do some really dumb stuff. And I also knew that I was a reasonably intelligent person. I mean, I'm not a genius, but I'm not thick either. And I used to I still do some really dumb stuff. But I made poor decisions at different times in my life, not so that there were consequences like some of the people I worked with in the cops. But I got more and more interested in what motivates human behaviour. And into my orbit came, and this is around the time of, if we go back to the 80s, I was in the police during the Springbok Tour time, the Rainbow Warrior time, so those in the 80s. And I ended up going on this personal development course, but it wasn't called a personal development course. You're right. It wasn't called that then. It was called a stress management course. That's how it was marketed. And I ended up going on there and just had this massive epiphany insight. And I realized that there was something I could do with this toxic relationship I had with myself. And that started me off on, I need to do this work on me. And it wasn't very long before I realized this is what I have to do with my life. And believe it or not, at that time, I was probably, you'd probably call me phobic or borderline phobic in terms of getting up in front of people. That was not what I was wired to do. What I was thinking going to teachers' college, I don't know. Maybe it was going to be okay in front of children, but my self-esteem and self-worth was so crappy, really, that the thought of getting up in front of peers and other adults and whatnot, it just no good. And yet I found myself seeking an apprenticeship in the business that taught this personal development course that I went on. And I guess it's part of what we're talking about here tonight in terms of purpose. My fear of presenting and public speaking was not as strong as my call to do the work that I had been doing. Why? Because it was so profoundly impactful on my life. So there are some things, as you know, as everyone listening will know, there are things that you just can't deny once you know them. So that purpose, and for the listeners, if you're wondering about that in terms of, well, I'm too scared to be bold enough to take this step or whatever, it is that higher purpose that will lift us out of that. And I'm sure everyone listening has done that 100 times in their lives anyway, but that's I mean, it sounds textbook, but that's what happened to me. And I did that. I apprenticed in that environment for about 7 years and embarked out on my own in my own business way back. Were you born 1992?
I was born then.
Looking good, girl. So that's kind of how I got to be doing. And that personal development started out teaching presentation skills and a little bit of team development, but the focus was on people finding their voice and finding conviction and connecting up inside, being present, all of that sort of stuff. And off that spun all these other things. And then conscious evolution was something that I'd sort of heard about on the fringes, and that just came more and more into my orbit as something that was kind of an explanation of where we were as human beings that really resonated. So inspiring conscious evolution is what I'm on about. Deliberate improvement, not just waiting for life to take us wherever we go, but to actually have a vision for where we might want to go and figure out how can we go that way. And you know, the COVID-19 global pandemic, it's a crisis, and crisis drives evolution. So I'm very excited to see the upside of what this whole situation brings us to. I don't think all of us are ready for it, and not everyone recognises that crisis actually drives evolution. It allows for cracking open something new.
Yes,
I suppose
beautifully into the
Eh?
And I guess all of that innovation and that creativity is just here waiting to kind of be born now, which
Oh,
we
yeah.
yeah. But you talk about conscious evolution, and it's a pretty big, pretty meaty topic. What does it mean to you? What does conscious evolution mean, and how would you share that with listeners who have never really come across it before and don't really understand how it plays into personal development context?
Okay, well, the first thing I'd say is that using the word evolution is not any kind of affront to anyone's religious convictions or anything like that. If you think about your own lifetime, you know, your body has evolved. You don't look the same as you did when you were born. It's grown quite a bit. Our thoughts and feelings evolve. What was important to us when we were 4 might be still important now, but some things might be more important than my broken ice block, you know, whereas when I'm 4, that is the most heartbreaking, terrible thing that could ever happen. Maybe when we're 14, it's something else. Maybe when we're 24, it's something else. So our feelings and thoughts are evolving. We know this through the developmental process. And, you know, we know that along the way, life happens and we respond to it as best we can. And if you think about where we're at now, humans have incredible powers. You know, we've got the power to destroy our own planet, our planetary home. And conscious evolution, like I don't think we're going to be physically evolving another arm or leg anytime soon, but the mental, emotional, and spiritual evolution that continues with our ongoing growth. It doesn't stop when we physically stop growing and then just, you know, head off into life around about 25 or whatever it is, when our brain has supposedly got a little level of maturity so that we can make better decisions than we did when we were 15, possibly, you know, those kinds of things. But to be deliberate about it. Conscious evolution is identifying we're at a moment in our history as a species where we really do truly have the power to decide the direction that we're going in. And I'm sure that those people on this call, and especially people who have children, are very aware of looking out into the future and seeing what kind of world, if we keep doing what we were doing, that we're leaving for our children and grandchildren. You know, they don't deserve that. They didn't set that up. So for us to be deliberate about it means that we have to look climate change in the face. We have to look the economic model and what our economy is based on in the face, because we're seeing the vulnerabilities of those things as this crisis kind of lays bare maybe some of the flaws in the big meta systems that kind of keep humanity organised. So that's how I see it. And look, I'm not an economist. I'm not, you know, I just am a very keen observer of the big picture and how it flows all the way to an individual, like a baby being born today is born into a context, and that context will be helping that baby flourish or maybe not. So I'm all for, let's be deliberate about what we know can enable us to get on board and paddle. You know, we're quite a young species, Erin, in the scheme of things. You know, we're quite immature. We're not yet, well, I don't see us as being equal to emotionally, mentally, and spiritual to the great powers that we have. You know, you look at the kind of human that has the power to push a button and that's it. You know, you need a bit you need a bit of maturity around those things.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a very satisfying answer, but that's kind of where I'm coming from. It's about deliberate improvement, deliberately moving forward.
Yeah, totally. And in terms of being purpose driven, and I guess how that weaves into this concept of conscious evolution, how would you frame that up as, I guess, as a values driven person myself, and being really passionate about having that purpose? What would your advice be to someone who is kind of here on this interview because they're struggling with that idea of, are my values aligning with what I'm doing, and how am I feeling about who I am in this context and in this environment right now?
Well, should we offer a little exercise here for people? Do you think people have got a little piece of paper? Something to write with? So what I would encourage you to do is, if you do have a little piece of paper handy, just write down your response to the usual question that someone, you might meet them from a distance now, say hello, whatever, because we're not hugging, we're not doing, you know, Hongi's not there anymore for the minute. If you write down the answer to, what do you do? So someone comes up and meets you and says, what do you do? Just jot down how you respond to that. How do you identify with what it is you do? Just go ahead and do that. Just take a moment.
And if you're brave enough, you can even write it in the comments.
Yeah, you can write it in the comments. That'd be great. What do you do? Write it in the comments.
Delayed.
What's that?
She said, bearing in mind that it's a little bit delayed from us seeing the comments.
There is about a 30-second delay on this one, so we won't start seeing these for about half a minute. But just think about it. What do you do? And think about context. You know, if someone asks you in one setting, what do you do? Versus in another setting, what do you do? You may have different responses to that. So just type in the chat, if you will, and it's none of our business. It's just for the purpose of this exercise. You could make anything up, actually. So you don't even have to write down the real thing. But go for the truth if you can. So we got any of those coming in? Not yet?
Not yet. Just carry on, Amanda, and I'll flag you.
Okay, because we're going to have a part 2 to this. Once you have identified what do you do, then the next iteration of this, it's the same question. Ask yourself, what do you do? And then reframe your answer and preface it. I'll stick it up here. Now we're going to be able to see, aren't we?
Yeah, we can see that. Nice big writing.
It's these, mate. I've always told you, get these. I get to help people ... so they can ... I get to help people blah, 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 so they can blah, blah, blah. So if someone asks you, what do you do? And you say, oh, I'm an ECE teacher. That's your standard stock response. See if you can reframe that to, what do you do? And you know what I feel about ECE, Erin, because when I've worked with educators and those who are working with small people, you are shaping human destiny. Like, you seriously are shaping human destiny. We know how important those first 1,000 days are. We know that. Why we're not paying more attention to that, I don't know, but it'll come, and we can consciously evolve ECE. It's a matter of reinventing and dreaming up our way to go forward that actually works for far, far more families. So you might say, I get to help people fulfill their potential so they can live the life of their dreams. Now, if you worked with a child under 5, if you work with a child under 5 for 6 months, you're helping someone fulfill their potential in that moment so that they've got a foundation where they've got a life that they can co-create with whatever their environment's like and go for it. So, you know,
That
This,
perception thing's really strong too, because I think as a sector, we often look outside, and I guess, there's a lot of there's a lot of defining terms used for what an early childhood education teacher or educator is, and I know shaping human destiny is awesome because that lives into the full potential of everything that we would hope to be and hope to do. But as a sector, we have problems with the way other people define us, right? So
ah,
the better we can get at framing that up for ourselves and for others,
yes.
and presenting the real truth behind that in a purpose-driven and values-aligned way, the more that will then be received.
Well, this is what doing this can do, because this is a little transformation in perception. And we know that the way we frame things is what we make up in terms of the meaning of things. And well, I've worked with a lot of educators, and I'll say, "What do you do?" And they go, "I'm just a."
Mm.
I'm just a. There's a diminishing of it. There isn't a claimation of this is what I do, And so when you get to help people blah blah so they can blah blah, you tap into your higher purpose. You tap into your higher purpose, the higher purpose for that thing. You might be cleaning toilets in a hotel and someone says, "What do you do?" And you go, "I clean toilets in a hotel." Well, maybe you get to help people have a beautiful experience so that they can do what it is they have to do that contributes to the world that we all live in. It's not the job we're doing, it's what we're bringing to that job. It's what Martin Luther King Jr. used to always talk about. It's the where we are coming from, and it doesn't matter how big and grandiose that job is or how seemingly insignificant it is. We bring it's who are we bringing to that? We do the task for its own sake, not because it's a better task. I mean, we're learning this with COVID-19. Who are the essential workers?
Mm.
And a lot of those essential workers are the people who are not being paid, very much in the kind of economy that we built. And yet these are the people we need. So I would really encourage anyone that works in any sector that society, this goes for women in general, actually, because women's work is often devalued in the culture, in the subculture, in Western culture anyway. And so this idea that we can claim the importance of our work, no matter what the externals are saying. So it is. It's kind of like I've been laughed at in my career in terms of, what are you on about? What are you talking about? A coach approach, a critical approach. Tell people what they're doing wrong so they can fix it. And I'm going, no, tell people what they're doing right so they can do more of it, and what they're doing wrong will fall away by itself. I could be laughed out of the room. It doesn't matter, because I value that. And so what happens when we're in integrity with something, when it's profoundly right, eventually things move to shift. But we have to own it first. And I really, really see this in ECE. Everyone working in ECE has to own, really with a deep, deep conviction, as I know you do, and I know Tiny Nation does, of the importance of this work, not from a self-importance ego perspective, from a species importance. If we're not growing healthy humans, one unhealthy human growing up in neglect and abuse and all of that can create havoc in a community. Just one. Just like one person with COVID-19 can go to a bar and next thing. So we are all incredibly important in the mix. And it's not about self-important. It's just everybody matters. Everything matters.
And what an incredible opportunity, I guess, to take this high purpose, and it's a great values exercise. There's been a stream of comments, all taking this framework and talking about, I get to help people connect to build and enjoy strong, caring relationships.
Yeah.
Both with children, whānau, and communities. I get to help people make discoveries while they learn so they can develop a heart for life experience. Just some beautiful words. And I really encourage everyone listening, take this to your teams, take this to your communities, and
Yeah.
really use that as you move into level 2 as a higher purpose and a mantra that's going to drive your team to continue to offer those amazing high quality experiences for our tamariki. Yeah,
Exactly,
awesome.
because this
So
is,
many-
when I work with corporates with this, Erin, when I work with this with a senior leadership team in a corporate, and I say, "What do you do?" and they tell me what the brand says it does, and there's not it doesn't go boom boom, and yet once we go, we get to help people, blah blah. I mean, you're not saying what's your purpose? What's the higher purpose? It's like, that's too hard to answer. But if we answer it this way, then we start getting an ignition it's like a soul ignition. It's like, what? I get to do this. And the get to is the distinction. Does everyone understand that? Because when you say, I get to help children, fulfill their potential, I get to shape human destiny. What do you do? Sometimes people ask me what I do, and I say, I get to call forward the evolutionary integrity of our species.
Wow.
I mean, I've got a lot of ways that I can answer that when I'm in a down day, if I'm going in what's the point? This is not urgent. Food on the table's urgent and all the rest of it. As soon as I just move that across to, there's a lot of different ways that you can come out with this. And those of you listening, this, especially if you've worked with me before. It's lovely to see. I wasn't on the chat. I was in the private chat. So I wasn't seeing all the comments, but I'm seeing some names here that are very, very familiar. Some good mates out here in the audience. Hey. Notice what you notice.
Absolutely. So in terms of if we move on from this, knowing what our higher purpose is, and as we move into level 2, I know that I and probably a lot of people listening in at the moment are really, really focused on transitions. It's a big thing for me as a mum. How do I settle my boys back into care and into school after being with us for such a long period of time? What does it even look like? How do you manage all of the wobbles that come along with that? And I guess, how do you model for them what resilience looks like in these times of uncertainty? So what would your advice be to people out there kind of wondering about that transition and how to be the best version of themselves, and as a teacher, as a mum, as a friend, as a colleague, to help support everyone through that?
Well, I think that, the PM has been leading us, and Dr. Bloomfield has been leading us in a way that is intended to be as safe as houses for us to move out. Now, I know we're going to be living with this thing for a good long while yet, but the bottom line of it is life is unsafe. There are children who get run over in driveways. God bloody rest their souls. I mean, there are children who drown in swimming pools. Life is inherently a risky business, and having disease in the mix, there's measles, there's other diseases in the mix. We need to keep perspective around COVID-19, be practical, and we've got very simple guidelines that are going to help us. The transition side of it, I think, always come back to the truth framed in a way for children that they can understand and relate to, because some people have really engaged their children in this process and framed it with how very important they are. They're part of the nation's teamwork. It's not just adults that have to be one team New Zealand at this time. So bringing children into how important it is and how much they matter in the moment is another lesson in responsibility for children. And of course, it's going to be age appropriate. And you'll know that I'm not a parent. So I'm like, to all of those who have been managing this through this crisis. And I think a lot of parents I know are having a renewed respect for the teaching profession and PCE. And I've seen some hilarious memes around that. But in terms of resilience, number one, start with the truth. but you frame it in a way that's digestible for a child, because, you know, there's going to be more obsessive compulsive disorder for some people coming out of this, adults and children, where they're just not going to be able to stop washing their hands. Well, there's a loss of perspective. You know, we've got to come back to, now hang on a minute, yes, you do that regularly, but you're not doing it 24 hours a day. And so I think framing the transition, I always err on the side of, this is, you know, different people will respond differently to this. But, you know, if you look at your two boys, for example, I know you will be letting them know. You might notice that you have weird feelings about this because we've gotten used to something for quite a long time. And now this is a thing called change. And we're now going to have to get used to something different. That's what life is. I remember talking with a 5-year-old who never wanted his birthday party to end. And he was heartbroken when everyone went home. It's like, didn't you have a good time? Yes, I had a good time. I don't want it to be finished. This is change. It rolls around, it rolls around. So this is a transition, in essence, the same as any transition. You used to be at home, now you're going to school. Some children love it and relish it and can't wait. Others don't want to go to school, and it takes a while to settle into that. So I'm always keen on, go with the truth, frame it in a way that you know your child, you know the children who you're taking care of. If you're in an ECE setting and you've got children who want to be back at home because that's where, you know, they may well, and who knows, but they may well have formed a more secure attachment relationship than they had pre-COVID-19. I would suspect that that could be happening. There's a lot of children loving having time, especially with dad, with the whole family together, the sense of belonging, all of that. And when you think about what's important to a child, I would encourage you to reinforce that those things are not going anywhere. They're not going anywhere. So for us as adults modelling resilience, I think what we're modelling is, it's okay to not know what's going to happen next. It's okay to feel like this is life anyway. We never know what's going to happen next, really. We just get in a groove, and we've been in a nice little comfort zone, especially here in New Zealand. We're so blessed. I know we've got problems, we've got issues, but compared to some other places in the world, we are so blessed. And so to stay with your own sense of, it's okay, back yourself. We will get through this. I don't know how we will get through this. And I totally believe that if we all pull together, we will get through this. And eliciting cooperation from small people around you is always going to make it a whole lot easier. And that's what you guys are all experts at. You know, you can get that child to put their raincoat on.
Sometimes.
Some of us. But resilience is all about relationship, isn't it? It's about connectedness and being connected with yourself, being connected with the people around you, making sure you're putting your hand up if you're feeling lost. I'm sure that anyone on this call would be able to contact Tiny Nation, and you would have a safe pair of ears to hear and get great advice around, well, look, this is what's happening with my child. What can I do? You know, everybody that I'm coming across and everything I'm seeing is everyone wants to help. So if you are struggling,
of national cooperation, I think is one of the big things.
Absolutely. And the dumb thing to do is to not put your hand up, pretend everything's okay, because you know that children are tuned into the feeling tone of what's going on. So if they're saying, why are you sad, mummy, or why are you sad, daddy, or whatever, and you're saying, no, not, and they know you are, then they're now learning about lying about your emotional content. So you're much better off just telling the truth and saying, you know, sometimes we all get a bit wobbly, you know, you do too. It's not going to change. And not get heavy about it, you know?
Yeah, keep it light.
Keep it true. Keep it honest.
Authenticity all the way. So in terms of that, we started talking about resiliency, and it kind of bridges into a big piece of work that you've done that that we're quite keen to get a bit of an overview on. And The special surprise for those of you listening is that we've actually got a copy of Amanda's second book to give away tonight to one lucky person in the comments stream. And this book is all about activating your human superpowers. So if you're watching and you're listening and you haven't commented yet, please comment, because at the end of this, Amanda's going to choose one comment, and that person will get a copy of her Activating Your Human Superpowers book. So what's this book all about, Amanda?
Well, that's a very short question to a humongous answer, but the essence of this book is it's basically a growth framework. So some of you will be familiar with it because in your previous life, Erin, this is a very special thing in connection to that, because this is where this book was launched. It had its debut with you and your colleagues and the absolutely astoundingly wonderful visionary Jenny Yule. And basically what it is a framework for human growth. I'm waiting for someone to pick it up and go, right, how do we do this with small people? Because it's basically written with adults in mind. But the essence of the idea of the growth framework is that we as humans are born with powers. And I identify 5 of those in the book: awareness, intuition, imagination, reason, and will, the power to act. And those 5 powers are with us the whole time. Now, in conjunction with that, we've all got a human operating system. Every living thing has an operating system of some sort that makes it be whatever it's designed to be, and supposedly it will just unfold all by itself. And this is where conscious evolution comes in. That operating system has a little psychological infrastructure. I'm pointing to my head, but it's generally considered a psychological infrastructure that we would commonly call ego. And that infrastructure gives us a sense of, I'm different to you, you're separate from me. And of course, yes, we are an individual. We're gifted with a human lifetime as an individual. And at the same time, we are part of something far greater than ourselves. Of course, we have a relationship with whatever is everything. We have a relationship with ourselves. We have a relationship with other people, those up close, those not so close. So the framework really around activating your superpowers is to identify that, get to know that psychological infrastructure and what it is that shaped us, understand how we can activate those 5 powers to more mature, higher functioning, and that is what turns them into superpowers. And the essence of what's driving all of that is something I call evolutionary integrity. And if you think about those 2 words for a second, evolutionary integrity. The evolutionary integrity of a bean is a beanstalk. The evolutionary integrity of a rose is a rose. So that rose, even if it wanted to be a cauliflower, it's not going to be able to, because that's not who it is. And you might have seen, it always makes me laugh on those, those, what is it, like American Idol and programs like that, where someone comes and they get interviewed and it's like, what would it mean to win? And they go, oh, it's everything to me. And then you hear them sing. And it's like, that's not your dream, honey. You're trying to have someone else's dream. Who told you that that was your dream? And maybe a teenager's seen it on TV and wants to be that. But it's not who they are in essence. So our evolutionary integrity, for those of you who are parents, you see it in your babies. You see the essence of who they are. And it doesn't matter whether they're 1 or whether they're 21. There is something about them that is the same, and you can feel it in yourself. There's a sameness, there's an essence. So that evolutionary integrity, if you ask me, that is the only thing we need to do is to tune into that and let the ego, let the operating system that we classically identify as me, oh, I can't do that, that's not me. Oh, our family's not like that, that's not me. This egoic sort of, there's handbrakes and levers that tell us we can do this, we can't, we can't do that. And some of them might be accurate, but some of them might not. Some of them might be built out of untruths that people projected on us out of their own lack. Everyone does the best they can with the resources they have. And sometimes another person's resources were not the ones that we needed. So we can deliberately, as an adult, engage in investigating, activating our superpowers to higher functioning, tuning into our evolutionary integrity, and ego stays put. But it becomes, it's almost like saying ego thought it was the chief executive, but actually it's the operating officer. Your evolutionary integrity is your chief executive. And getting those lined up means that now as an individual, you have the power to be yourself in the world as individual, knowing you are part of something far, far greater and far more magnificent than we can even comprehend. So, we're a fractal of the whole. We know that in theory. So many of us know that in theory. Oh, yes, I know. We're all part of Team New Zealand at the moment. But I can go somewhere and do something because I can trust myself. I know where I've been. I haven't yet. Or other people who actually don't believe they matter. That it doesn't matter if I stuff it up. It doesn't matter if I'm late to the meeting. Who's going to care? Yeah. It's the same thing, both. It's a lack of responsibility. So yes, we have the gift of a human lifetime to experience as an exception to the oneness. That's the gift. We can do whatever we like with that lifetime, and there'll be consequences. And at the same time, we know we are part of the whole. So it's like I describe it as like, I'm aware I'm a grain of sand on the beach, totally insignificant. And I'm also aware I'm part of a beach. That's where a lot of people like to gather. It's a good place. So this book is about overviewing that concept, that idea that we have an evolutionary integrity, and it's got some strategies for how you can activate your powers. It's personal development, it's self-help, it's a framework for growth that is all-inclusive. So it wouldn't matter what your it doesn't matter what culture, it doesn't matter what religion, it doesn't matter what gender. It probably is going to make more sense if you've got a few miles on the clock so that you can have some reflection on those times earlier in your life where you got shaped. And the purpose is, of course, to find where the handbrakes are, or if I dare say it in this setting, to learn to compost the crap in your life so it can fertilize your future. Do you remember that one, you guys out there? Yeah? Compost your crap. Don't just keep it hidden away, because over the years it just gets toxic and it'll come back and bite you on the bum. So as you know, I'm a great believer. I'm a great believer in the value of personal development because it basically saved my life. I saved myself from myself. I had some very, very destructive ideas about who I was and what I was. And now I'm, warts and all, comfortable in my own skin, embracing the flaws. You probably remember also that I'm big on modelling the imperfection, the brilliance of imperfection, I mean.
And I think that, I guess that call around superpowers, and someone's just commented, wouldn't it be amazing to be able to teach our children about their superpowers in a way that...
Take this book, turn it into something that's for kids. That's not my area. I'm not called to work there. You are. Do it. Do it. This is open source technology. It's, And
Amanda is always very generous with her resources. And I remember that, copy it right. So take it away and use it well and use it with purpose.
I tell you what we could do, Erin. Yes. Here's an idea, and we haven't discussed this, so I'm just throwing it out there. I am very, very happy for anyone on this call to have a free digital on me copy of the book. Yes, we were giving away a hard copy, but that's only one person. So why don't we just give anyone that wants it on this call, and if they want to, I don't know how you could contact them, but what I will do is send you a master of the digital version, and you are welcome to put it out there. How's that?
Great. Okay. Anyone who's listening and wants a digital version, DM us. So direct message us on Facebook, your email address, and we will make sure that we get something out to you. Wow, how generous, Amanda. Thank you so much. So there you go. The learning keeps on giving. But in terms of the superpowers context, and one of the big things that you talk about in your book is the challenge of awakening, right? And I guess what that all means. And there's probably no better time and place than right now to talk about the challenge of awakening, where we are as a species, where we are as a world, where we are in this country. And one of the quotes that's going around on social media and I've really kind of enjoyed looking at is, before you rush back to normal, consider what normal is and consider what's worth rushing back to. And I guess this whole idea of now is the opportunity we have to co-create our new normal and what that can look like. So what would your thoughts be around that in terms of that challenge of awakening, specifically in a post-COVID world, and for the teachers and parents listening?
I reckon that we haven't seen the start of it yet. I think we're in sort of phase one. The fact that New Zealand is currently dealing with this at a health level so incredibly well relative to the rest of the world is a bit like saying, yeah, well, my feet are good if you take the universal body. I mean, if the species was, you know, us, and we said, well, my kidneys are okay, but the liver's failing, the heart's failing, the lungs are failing, the brain's going nuts, the whole body is not healthy. So in terms of thinking about that from a species level, yes, we've got an advantage here in New Zealand, but we've also got more of a clear track to run on, so that we're not dealing with a hot war. We're not dealing with some of the health challenges in terms of overwhelming hospitals and everything that ripples out from there. We are not having to deal with some of those in your face, got to deal with it now stuff. There's a lot we do have in our face having to deal with, particularly around the health of our economy. Now, as that goes forward, there will be, I suspect, those who are going, it's got to be about the money. How can we get the money? How can we get the money? And unless we've got some big thinkers, and we have, there's some very, very good papers around and some very good advice from very progressive thinkers. And I don't mean that in a you know, flaky way out kind of way. Very, very intelligent people kind of considering what is this opportunity. The Lever Room, I don't know if you've come across that. They have a paper out. I'm trying to think of the woman's name. I think it's Rebecca Mills, but I could have that wrong, so don't quote me. But if you look on the website, The Lever Room, there is a paper in there about how we could take advantage of this opportunity in terms of creating a green economy, in terms of looking at how we take care and grow baby humans, in terms of how we progress economically. Economic disparity. You know, we can now see the price we all pay for having so much poverty. We can see the price we all pay for people not living in dry, safe home environments where there is too much overcrowding, where people are working 3 jobs to try and put food on the table because the minimum wage just doesn't match what the outgoings are. We've got our focus. Humanity has a lot on money. And I know we need a form of exchange, but at this time, we're having an opportunity to see, well, where are the flaws and how could we move forward? And this is where organising and lobbying and making sure that we've got people creating policy that's based on the facts. And you and I, and probably everyone listening, knows damn well that the neuroscience is in about what it is that creates an environment that helps a healthy human grow. And if we are going to be ignorant enough and stupid enough not to listen to the neuroscience, we will see it, down the track. I remember Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was she was all about death and dying, and an amazing woman. And she was saying, you know, like there are going to be times when you prop your baby up and have the bottle on a pillow and you can go away and do something and that baby will feed itself. And she said, yeah, you can do that, but you do that all the time and you'll pay for it when they're 21. And I was about 24 when I heard this, and I thought, I don't even know what she's talking about. But you guys would know what she's talking about. So this plant seeds now for later. Foundations are so important. And if we do not lobby our politicians and we do not push for policies that allow for what is right and proper for a child to have an environment in which it's nourished and can thrive, then how stupid would we be? So I guess, yeah, I don't know if that's very satisfying either, but I get a bit of a bee in my bonnet.
You speak in the same, you know, we've had Mike Bedford, who's a public health expert in early childhood education. We've had Judy Hunter, who's an mental health specialist. You know, Judy, you've worked with her before. Also, all echoing the same things, you know. We need to unleash this creativity and innovation that exists in early learning and actually co-create something that takes all the best bits of the work that we do, melds it together to create these environments where children can flourish and grow and live into their full potential. So now,
yeah, I mean, it's an ecosystem, isn't it? It's an ecosystem, and if you understand an ecosystem, you understand that everything's connected. And so we can't just go, right, well, we'll just take this out here, this little bit out here, and disconnect it for convenience. It's counterintuitive for a start. So, yeah, I think we need to be going forward with, this will be where women need to use their voice and speak up. You know, 20 years ago, they were predicting in England that there would be a women's driven economy because women are going to be sick of not being able to take their children to work. They're going to want to have childcare centres. So if they don't have that at work, they'll build their own businesses and they'll build in the childcare centre. They were talking about that, you know, or the build in the child care, how that's going to happen in a way that was working for them. So, you know, I mean, there's lots of variations on how baby humans can be raised as long as those fundamentals are in place and we have secure attachments and that child is safe in a psychological and emotional way, is just as much as physically. But yeah, I know, you know, I get a bit of a bee in my bonnet about ECE. I'm on your team. I'm on your team.
Good to know. In terms of, and we've already just about hit the hour session slot. We could probably go all night and all day tomorrow as well. So I'm sure there's lots of people listening who would love to know more, hear more, and it's great that you've put out that free ebook to everyone. That's incredible and so generous. If they wanted to touch base with you, learn a bit more about your work, or talk to you about work that you could do with them and their teams, what do they do? Where do they go?
Well, because my business has changed completely as of lockdown, of course, because my work involves gatherings of people and doing experiential activities that provoke insight. So I'm moving to the online space. If you want to type in or just cut and paste my, just because I haven't got my glasses on, I could probably see it down there. Just type in the website with a /home and that will get people in touch anyway. There's a contact button there. I'm always happy to give people an ear. There is some of you will be aware of this, there's an online version of this book. Well, it's not a version. Based on the book, I've got a 1 whole year, 1 hour a week personal growth, self-directed personal growth program called the Accelerator, and that is designed to do the actual work. So I guess, if you like, it brings the book to life. The book's got activities and exercises in it that you can do by way of self-reflection, but in the program there are guided audios, there are videos. They're crap. I made them on my phone 2 years ago. They're just terrible, but the content in them is still solid. And there are resources, you know, there's reading, there's guided reflections and whatnot. That is not for everyone, but for serious players, that if you know you know what, I think I've got work to do because I feel like I can sense my evolutionary integrity. I don't know how to latch onto it, or I've gone, like you might have been like me and gone off the reservation so far that you kind of feel lost and in despair and you don't know what's going on in your life. And that process of coming back to self, coming home to self, being completely accepting and embracing of self. And I'll just throw this in because I know we've got to go, but this idea of self-love, you know, you've got to love yourself before anything. Ego will never get enough of that. So if you think about self-love at the next level, your evolutionary integrity, which is really an expression of the divinity of all creation, what's not to love? And you can get a bit pissed off with your own, excuse my language, but you can get a bit pissed off with your own egoic handbrakes and your own patterns, and you, what did I do that for? You know, but if you can tune into that essence of who you are, that is unconditionally loving. It's on your team. It always has been. It always will be. And that is your inner coach. And so getting that on board, that is where, you know, ego comes into alignment, and then they can be mates. And your ego can be your friend, and the whole package is fine. So if you're worrying about self-love and all of that sort of stuff, and your ego goes, oh, shut up, you are not lovable, just go, that's okay. I will love my essence. And that's easier because you only need to look at a flower. You only need to look at a baby and you'll know what I'm talking about, because you are the same. We are all the same. It's a beautiful thing packaged in all our different ways. I can't believe the time has evaporated, hasn't it?
I know. There we go.
I can bang on like a pork chop, you know that.
We'll have to get you on for a part 2, Amanda. We've had so many comments of people who've been so inspired. One person's just said she must have been taking notes. When you said compost your crap, was it so that you can fertilise your future?
That's right.
So there you go. That was Jackie. So Amanda, do you want to do a quick scroll through those comments and
all right, I'm gonna do a spin. I'll just go like that. I'll go to the bottom and I'll do a spin up. Oh, there's a lot, and I'll do a spin down, stop. And we have Serena Rogers. I don't know you, Serena. I don't know you, Serena.
Serena, but you've a message, and we'll get your details, and we will post. Well done, congrats, and thank you so much for everyone who's tuned in tonight. We're loving seeing so much interest in our Expanding Our Bubbles interviews. Thank you so much, Amanda, for coming along and sharing all of your wisdom. Next week, we've got Sarah Iono from Longworth Education, who talks about how it's all about the play and play-based learning, and how play-based learning supports those transitions and settling during these challenging times. So tune in next week for Sarah, and we'll make sure we bring Amanda back for a part 2 too sometime soon. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you very much. See you, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.